can record it.
Yes, it looks like I can. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Sorry for this.
Sorry for the interruption, Manos.
No, it's okay. I think it looks like that you're recording. I did, for marketing purposes, a little bit of alteration on the title of the lecture, because if I was telling you that I would talk about the inhuman, probably no one would actually join the lecture, because you love too much our own species, and everything has to be around the human. So I said, okay, let's pretend that we will talk about the human, but then let's get them out of surprise and somehow discuss precisely what we don't know and we don't really can access. And although it's kind of of notes, it's more or less like a 3 steps, like giving you a little bit of insight of how design and especially urban design revolves around the idea of the human, and then to give you some kind of hints of what I think we should actually start thinking from now on. Although I was believing that we should actually have that kind of epistemological framework quite a few years before, and what actually the COVID-19 or the whole situation is bringing into the table. Okay, so although we don't have a clear plan of how to move forward, I think it's time to start devising a deliberate plan. You know, so to kind of coordinate the whole cosmos, the whole planet. Because one of the things that COVID-19 gives us is this kind of inside vision that we are part of this planet, and no matter how hard we work to get rid of other entities around us, they keep banging our door. So let's start by highlighting, you know, how we arrived in this kind of the moment and what kind of problems we have actually kind of constituted on this planet. And for me, there are kind of a few moments, like, for example, the urban intensification, where, you know, the urban morphologies and urban settlements becoming like a territorial apparatus, where everything is subsumed under a very specific ideological and epistemological apparatus that captures everything with its production and consumption model. And of course, all these kind of gives this kind of planetary travelers, where we exploit all the possible resources from this planet, as we tend to live alone on this kind of scenario and on this planet. And once something kind of disturbs this kind of hegemony or exceptionalism from us, we tend to kind of close ourselves into our little cells, which is our own kind of houses. And of course, this is part of this of the problem that we have created as Western culture mainly, and as white male Western people, that we have relied heavily in one only epistemology, and that's kind of what I call the Anthropocentric Epistemology. An episteme, or a way to know things based on a very, very specific perspective, and of course forgetting everything else that we have invented into the past. But still, by saying this one, we kind of move forward this kind of white male epistemological framework, and we apply it also into the planetary computation, which has become again a unidirectional vector of knowledge and of seeing and understanding everything. You see, we observe the galaxy, and we tend to see dogs everywhere. Is this kind of banal reactions and reflections that we have that kind of limited our understanding of the world and the planet. And that's why we are so surprised and we are so afraid and we are so under all kind of old type of confinements nowadays when we are facing viruses that are plenty out there, and we just don't know how we can interface them and how we can mediate them. So these are kind of the current situation that we are in. You know, from one hand, we exploit the natural, or I refrain from the word natural, but for the resources of this planet. But at the same time, we invent new raw material like data, and the same kind of exploitive kind of attitude is taking place on that territory. The that it is applied, if it is material resources or data resources. So that's why everything starts from zero, and I think we should actually start from zero again, because it's moment to start think and rethink where we are at that kind of scenario. And I think we should actually put the problem into the center. And for me, the problem is precisely that kind of relation, the human or the anthropos metron. You know, it started with Protagoras in ancient Greece, and has proliferated and propagated throughout thousands of years into Western metaphysics and Western culture. And Greeks did many kind of interesting things. They didn't invent it much, because other civilizations have invented mathematics, astronomy, and so on and so forth. But they did something really, really interesting and really, really fundamental. They kind of saved all that kind of knowledge in order to understand the human, and in order to understand the human as the metron. Metron in Greek means the measurement of all things. So human for the ancient Greek is becoming the measurement of all things, and even its own kind of God system has this kind of anthropomorphized pictures and images. But this kind of idea was picked up when we realized that God is dead. And Renaissance brings precisely the human again as a measurement of all things. And this is where modernity is kind of beginning, you know, by realizing that the God is dead, and by getting rid of a value system and hierarchy of theocentricity, we enter into the era of anthropocentricity or human centricity. And this is where we put again ourselves at the center of the world, and we start kind of measure things around us through our own image and through our own reflection. And this is the way we actually start kind of creating and imagining and projecting our cities. You know, our cities becoming this kind of utopian environments that are designed and valued according to human rhythms and human measurements. But of course, you know, even if this is the case, we still have the capacity to understand that somehow, well, how we can, if the God doesn't exist, how we can actually capture these kind of moments of infiniteness of the world into our own system. And this is where Baroque is coming, where the thousand of pleas and falls of the world, but still human is at the center of this kind of approach. Not to say much, it's not a kind of a detailed history of urban design around the human, but it is precisely very kind of keystones and key points in the history where human is becoming the center of understanding and the center of production of knowledge. And then once we have arrived at the moment where everything is becoming a picture of the human, and the human is the measure of everything. It's time to abstract this kind of ideals into a more kind of generic understanding of the urban. And this is the first attempt to actually apply a formal system into the urban design. And back then, it's almost like similar kind of conditions that we have nowadays. You know, it was this kind of little crowded and cramped urban settlements, or let's say settlements that were full of dirt and diseases, and somehow we were looking for ways to clean them up, to bring them forward into kind of more breathable environment, and to allow this to breathe fresh air. And this is what actually Cerdà is doing in his Barcelona plan. He's trying to create and redesign the urban infrastructure or the city infrastructure, because those days we still had that kind of distinction between the urbi and the civitas. And he tried to kind of rationalize the urban form in such a way where we can actually get rid of all this kind of crowded and cramped settlements like the Barrio Gótico in Barcelona. And of course, the same kind of principles, as you probably know, they have been already applied in Paris by another urban planner, Haussmann, in those days, which with the pretext of cleaning the city, he turns out in a very kind of political agenda, and he kind of attacks the Paris Commune in France and in Paris specifically. But what is interesting here is to see how for example, something has to do with the biological aspect of the human being is becoming a biopolitical, and how things they can tend to have a very specific aim, like for example in Cerdà's plan of Barcelona, is becoming a political force and a political discourse in the plan of Paris and the work of Haussmann. Not to say that we are facing exactly the same nowadays, and don't get me wrong, it's not a climate denial, but climate change has become a political agenda. It's part of the political agenda, and we should be aware of this. Okay, it's not about denying the climate change, but we should actually understand how this climate change agenda has entered politics. And you will find kind of rather funny that it was Margaret Thatcher that actually brings the climate change agenda into the politics in an attempt to deindustrialize UK. And of course, in those days, now this is like a little parenthesis, the brother of Jeremy Corbyn, that he's a scientist that studies the climate change in the relation of the position of the sun to the earth, was used by the coal miners and in order to plan their strikes. So they asked him to predict if there's going to be a cold winter or not, so to see if the strikes will have an immediate effect on the population, and therefore will become a very kind of strong lever for political change. This is what Cerdà is doing. You know, it's facing this kind of similar situation that we have nowadays, where human diseases kind of eradicate human species from the face of Earth, and it's not only the vaccines and science and medicines that are giving their effort towards that direction, but it's actually the spatial organization of the city. And this is something really, really kind of important to rethink nowadays. the spatiality and the spatial organization of the cities and of the urban environment. So with this kind of understanding, we even this kind of human exceptionalism kind of start leaving back this kind of material substratum and becoming all the more abstract. And this kind of rationalization of the life, where the material substratum of planet or anything else has no meaning unless it is being kind of codified and given meaning by abstract relationships. And the pinnacle of this kind of effort is coming at the end of the previous century with Principia Mathematica, written by Whitehead and Russell. It is an effort to elevate thinking beyond the dirty matter of the world and find also cleanness and clarity into the crystal clear understanding of logic and rational thinking. So Principia Mathematica was a very ambitious project. It was a project that was attempting to clarify thinking and therefore to create a moral, let's say, pretext for all the actions of the humans and all the interactions, all the human interactions. The project was so kind of big and promising that it lasted only for 10 years, because in 1922 is Kurt Gödel, that actually comes from Vienna, and although he's a logician, it actually proves that there is no such a clear system that can describe all the possible relationships in a decidable manner. So he's the first that he introduces in every kind of formal system, in every kind of abstract system, the idea of the undecidability, something that cannot be decided if it's right or wrong, if it's on or off, if it is good or bad. And kind of 11 years after, another kind of mathematician, this time is Alan Turing, introduced into this kind of attempt of the human species to create, or the human mind, to create this kind of clear understanding of the world. He's introducing the idea of the incomputable, that there are problems that cannot be computed through a formal system. So it is kind of impossible to run an algorithm and to give you a definite answer. There might be problems that they cannot be computed. They cannot stop on a very definitive answer. And this is kind of interesting, because you realize that we know all this kind of undecidability and incomputability from the beginnings of the 20th century. But still, you know, our fantasies and our epistemologies and our kind of human exceptionalism kind of ignored all that, and he was trying to calculate and compute everything on this world. This is the first computer. If you don't know what a computer is a human being that has let's say a piece of paper. It has actually it has a lot of pieces of paper. It has a pencil. It has an eraser. He has a mind and eyes that can read a textbook, and he can actually, or she can actually, as we can see from these pictures, she can actually calculate specific problems. And it's precisely this, the abstraction of this activity that helped Turing to create his universal abstract machine, and to create and to prove that there are problems that are incomputable, that cannot be computed. And it's interesting because the head of this lady is becoming the CPU. The unlimited resources of paper is becoming the RAM, and the rule book, the mathematical rule book for calculating, for example, the missile trajectories, are becoming the software. And this is what we have in front of us. This is the principles of computing. So this kind of fantasy of super effectively organizing the city is part of the efforts of urban design as well. And this is Hibbersmeyer, that he finds that the capitalist city at the beginning of the century is a chaotic one, and therefore is not effective. And he's trying to organize the city in such a way where it will have a very clear distinction between where is the inhabitable space, where the space of working, where is the space of cars, or what we already know nowadays is out of the modernist vocabulary, the zoning principles of modern urban design. That actually was evangelized by Le Corbusier and becoming the main principle of urban design until the 1950s, not to say until nowadays. The city of tomorrow is interesting because precisely is starting with this kind of need for clarity and organization. And the first sentence of the book is I think it's on the book on Towards New Architecture, not in this book, but the first sentence of the book is that the city and what we live is very custom and therefore dirty, and somehow we need to introduce this kind of clarity of organization and clear distinctions between where we live and how we approach nature. And this is where, you know, the urban infrastructure and the natural infrastructure and the natural substrate they're coming into a distance. We all know the practices of modern movement to leave the nature intact. That's why everything was built on pilotis and pillars. But of course, all this kind of ideas, all this kind of extreme ideas of clarity, decidability, and crystal clear systems, or of purity, led to some kind of political events that immediately destroyed or associated the modern movement with all sort of wrong political associations. And after the war, after the Second World War, there's a big now question. And again, the question is where we are as humans, right? And there are two streams that stem out of this kind of question. One stream recalls for a return back into the original human, and now the human is not anymore is not being written as the rational logic being, but it is the being that has feelings and emotions. So you can understand that a whole phenomenological stream, both in philosophy and in design, architecture, and urban design, is being propagated out of this. And there is another stream that says, well, we never managed to move away from the human, and actually we never managed to become what those days, even those days, was used the word of post-human. You know, how we can actually move beyond this kind of very specific measurements or human measurements of the world, either through our own bodily measurements or through rationality of our logic and of our thinking. So Siam with the team 10 precisely poses that kind of questions, and a whole kind of history is being developed out of them, where we have settlements now that kind of respect this kind of human feeling and human emotion and the human density. And of course, you know, Jane Jacobs is the one that is way too vocal to bring back the village into the main urban metropolis or the main urban environments. And this is where she recognized the problem of the town planning, and that actually kind of broke this kind of connection of the human community and the human society. And you can understand that something that started again from the same problematic that we have nowadays, you know, the idea of isolation and confinement. And if we want to argue, the ideal scenario of what we live nowadays is Hildesheimer, right? So we are completely isolated. Everything is well organized. There are zones that are not allowed for us to go. And we can actually stay in our cubicles and live there until virus will kind of disappear. But of course, as we move forward, this kind of idea of clarity and eugenics, and that was kind of terrible when applied to societies, kind of diminishing, and people start breathing again, and they want it back, you know, this kind of emotional substrate and the feelings in the communities, and the scale of the local in order to kind of survive. That's why in 1964, Bernard Rudowski organized this kind of exhibition, The Architecture Without Architects. So suddenly we're becoming irrelevant, because people know better how to live together, and it's a matter of looking the villages around the world, you know, to see settlements, successful settlements of successful community. So we're doing circles around the same kind of theme, and this is because, you know, we have different pressing questions all the time. But there were moments where people were trying to mediate between, you know, instead of going completely all the way down to the past and to see this kind of settlements, maybe we can actually start introducing more kind of radical and avant-garde ideas of how we can organize partially the cities of the future. So again, we're becoming, this is Jonas Friedman, that he's kind of mediate between the global and the local, although his Villa Spatiale is this kind of apparatus, that the territorial apparatus that can cover the whole planet. At the same time, you know, it allows this kind of immediate local interaction with participation among the inhabitants of this city. And it's not only that, but it's actually the first time that that another agency it takes part, the agency of a computer, or this kind of rationalized systemic apparatus is introduced in order for inhabitants to find the best possible territory or local territory in this Villa Spatiale to develop their own kind of settlements and houses. Because the other part was precisely this, you know, that we never managed to live. We said that after the Second World War, there are two tendencies. One is to go back and find human beings, and another one is to move forward from the human and to construct even more abstract system. And precisely this is where the whole idea of cybernetics kind of stem. A more abstract level where humans, animals, and machines, they kind of been read as control and communicative machines, entities that can produce, translate, and exchange information. And this is started with Norbert Wiener, you know, how to control and communicate the animal and the machine, how we can see this kind of common level of understanding between the material substratum of the animal and the kind of abstract level of the machine. This is Norbert Wiener. And then it's and it is kind of this point where a very interesting research stream is being developed. How are we going in terms of time? I think we are okay. And it's precisely this moment where all this kind of substrate of machinery somehow it returns back into the human, or kind of never escape this kind of human reflectionism and human idea. So this is Elsie and Elmer. There are two turtles robots that they were used in order to. This is Walter Gray, I think. Yeah, this is Walter Gray. He's a scientist, and he's devising these two robots in order to understand the human behavior according to certain kind of signals that you can get from the environment. For part of the story, Walter Gray was part of the scientific committee that put Alan Turing into a therapy in order to transform it from a gay person into a straight person. So the whole idea that this kind of communication between the human and the machine is coming back into popular science and urban design. And whenever a machine takes an autonomy, there is always this kind of moral issue and bad connotation. This is 2001 Space Odyssey, this kind of interaction between the humans and the computers, very first popularized in the film of Kubrick. But of course, there are this kind of urban design attempts where now the machines, they are there to become not the bad guys, but the servants of the human activity. So according to Constant, all the machinery is being hidden underground. They work as an infrastructure, and they allow for people to get free time and interact on the surface on the earth. So technology, it has a kind of connotation with everything that we know out there. You know, is becoming subservient to us. Is becoming a servant, and what they don't obey, they're becoming they have been rendered as bad. And when they do obey, the better they do their job. They can free us to do other things. Machines and technology were never thought to have this kind of attitude of liberating us and help us to think ourselves different through them. And the same happens with the material world that we have around us. We know we always reflect this kind of image, but we never allow for materials or for technology to tell us what we can be. So in all these kind of examples, technology is becoming part of this master to slave relationship. Although the aim and the scopes are really kind of brave and generous, but we still have this kind of attitude of reflecting ourselves and use everything as a tool to our exceptionalism. So we had to kind of this is a very kind of nice collage from 2015. Is this my second kind of year in Bartlett, and at that point, urban design somehow was divided into two streams, and there was a huge antagonism between you know these the agenda of the urban design in general. The one was the lower part was heavily founded on the political discourse of Western societies, and the upper one was precisely was trying to explore new materials and to use the substratum of the planet in order to construct new kind of urban morphologies. Somehow we kind of managed to merge the two. Into kind of interesting discourse where, well, the kind of material substratum is not just a formal exercise on a morphological level, but it's becoming through its spatial organization the kind of the sparkling moment for new kind of politics to be rethought. And it's precisely this kind of attitude that is kind of interesting nowadays. Instead of keep moving along this kind of distinction between you know, culture and nature, or artificial and natural, we kind of suggest, and I kind of suggest, I take that kind of responsibility, that we should actually refrain from that from that distinction. Okay, and this is where the whole idea of the inhuman is coming into play. Inhuman doesn't, you should not read inhuman through the moral humanist perspective, you know, that it's something bad for the human, but it's actually when we can actually think the world without the presence of a human, and the human as a concept of the Western metaphysics. Okay, and we try to write a little bit about this. Let me move into this kind of second sector, to go back into the human, because we tend to, and this is a very kind of logical tendency, you know, we mediate through our senses and navigate with our senses this world, and we make distinctions, and that's fine. And this is how we make a distinction between what is human and what is non-human. This is how we have created the world for us. You know, it's the world that we perceive, that we can see, that we can feel, and we have devised technologies through which we can expand that world, the world for us. But it is also this through this kind of distinction that we can create the world in itself. You know, that the world can do its own things without the need for our presence, and that's kind of fair. That's why we make this kind of distinction between the human and the non-human. But the world cannot be kind of limited into this kind of two distinctions, and that's why we are suggesting to introduce another term, and this is the world without us. It's the world without us doesn't mean that we have to be erased from the planet Earth. Don't mistake my saying here. It's a highly conceptual moment where the world without us is a world where we refrain to make any distinction or to take any decision, and therefore we refrain to make any, or to mark, or to inscribe any difference on this world. Okay, and it is precisely this inhuman that would allow us to devise better, not kind of better, but more kind of interesting strategies for all this kind of era that we are in, and some people would call it Anthropocene. Because if you think about it, Anthropocene is a highly problematic term, precisely because it's been rested on this kind of division between what is human and what is non-human, and what is culture and artificial and what is nature. It is as if we have created a difference into this world, and therefore, in order to recuperate this difference, we have specific actions to take. The reason I'm saying is problematic, the whole Anthropocene is precisely because it brings anthropos back into the center. And the way we formalize problems, most likely we have very specific responses out of this. So I would like to kind of refrain from that kind of distinction. And in this time now, with coronavirus doing its own thing, to start kind of understanding this kind of inhumanity of this world, and therefore the inhuman and the design are linked precisely. On this kind of paragraph. Now I cannot see what it says here, but this paragraph by Eugene Thacker, and so it's not finding a new or improved version of the world for us. And I think this is the problem with all this kind of moments of the post-Anthropocene strategies that are devised. You know, geoengineering, terraforming, and all these ideas is to precisely create a better world for us. But at the same time, it is not to relentlessly pursuing the phantom objectivity of the world in itself. The real challenge lies in confronting this enigmatic concept of the world without us and understanding why this world without us continues to persist in the shadows of the world for us and the world in itself. So we need to understand, okay, there is a world without us. No matter what we do, no matter how we think, no matter how we devise that kind of distinction, there are entities and there are things out there that are under our radar and they do their own things. We never understood how the virus jumps from the animal animal category, let's say, to the human category. And it's really difficult to track this kind of pandemic nowadays, precisely because this kind of unknown virus is kind of have a behavior that is really hard for us to map. We will map it in the future. But for the moment, this gives us this kind of insight that there is a world there without us. And this world is doing its own things. So I'm trying to invite to think, and this is kind of relevant for your projects and for your curriculum at the school, a post-natural scenario of urban design. I know that you're talking about synthetic landscape. I know that you're trying to invent new kind of terminologies, categories, and spatial organizations. But it is a moment, and I think it's a pressing moment to start by not devising the world, not putting ourselves to do the division of this world. And to be honest, this is my interest in this kind of alien intelligences, because it gives us a glimpses of how the world can be divided differently. And that's why I span this kind of interest between biology and organisms, and of course artificial intelligence and neural networks. It's precisely because I think and I strongly believe that there are glimpses of a world without us through this kind of intelligences. So to conclude, this is like the third part, and how we gonna, what is happening into the world now under the pandemics of COVID-19. I hope we will have to obey this, and you all obey to this kind of archaic type of confinement. But believe it or not, this is everything that we have developed all this kind of years. I hope this is kind of a good call to kind of invent new methods to interact and mediate with a planetary scale. With an anecdote or like a story back from I think it was 1946, 1947. Oh no, it's 1948, where Frederick Brown wrote the shortest horror story ever be written, and the story goes like this: the last man on earth sat alone in a room. There was a knock on the door, and that's it. And then Ron Smith came 11 years after, and he wrote the shortest horror movie, which I think is kind of relevant to the conditions. There was a lock on the door. And these two stories gives you two glimpses of two different horrors. One is a horror that kind of invites us to interact with it. The other one is a locks us incapable of any kind of actions. So if we are incapable of any kind of actions nowadays, I suggest it's time to think and to rethink our role in this planet. to refrain from our exceptionalism to decide and divide the world, and to allow for some kind of speculative what kind of other categories are possible. Of course, from our side, is not going to help find the new vaccine, because there are fields of science that they do this kind of successfully, and our aim, and our project is to understand how this world can be developed in spatial terms. And I think our main material for work and action is space that organizes people and bodies and ideas through any kind of settlement. Saying all this, it's time to think, but don't think too much, because we need to devise a plan, and we should not allow the already plans of Trump and of any kind of political leader nowadays that is so conservative to become the first the raw material for the plans of our world to tomorrow. So thank you very much. Sorry if I've taken a lot of time. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Manos.
Okay.
I think
And I think Zoom's invent clapping applications. So, you know, when they put a button, so an artificial, like a sitcom clapping will take place.
Yeah, that doesn't crash the Zoom.
Yeah,
it's a great
exactly.
idea, I would suggest. Thanks a lot. I think this was great. My connection started to be a little bit wobbly, so if I disappear, I apologize in advance. I just realized recently that I should not have connection at lunchtime because it's a bad timing here in London, it looks like. Yeah. But we will try our best to stay connected. So I really appreciate the lecture and this courses. I discovered new things about our history and work, which is great. I also convened that the recent spatial response to the crisis is obsolete, but it looks like we have no better response, and this is what we need to do now. And that's the reason why I initiated the seminar series on this subject, to try and understand whether there are alternative responses that we can give on a spatial level to this crisis, different than the lockdown and the segregation. Having said that, I'll open to the public. Are there some questions? Maybe I'll keep mine for later.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking about if you consider a culture as a production that's involving within a spectrum of resources available. So native cultures involved within the spectrum of natural resources available in the environment where they live. And then I was thinking about modern culture also re-evolving within the spectrum of resources available. So now there's like billions of digital and analog and social resources available. That the modern culture is revolving like within. So I was thinking about if if modern like society is relating to like a second nature that we have created for ourselves that provides these resources, and if it's possible for like humanity to return to the origin that you can say that maybe the native cultures have, like also like considering black and white environmentalism, like if that's maybe the problem that like humanity has distanced themselves from the origin, maybe.
Okay. I don't think that there is where do you actually locate the origin? And this is something that we should actually be be very careful with that. I don't think it's a matter of returning to any kind of a past settlement. There is no way back, and there is no such thing as nature. Nature as a concept and as an idea is a construct of a European thinking. Okay, and maybe you know, maybe you don't. Like Chinese culture never had the concept of nature or the distinction between this and that. Natural and artificial until the 17th century, and so it's really kind of difficult to assume that we can return back into this kind of nomadic and pre-modern kind of cultures that they were using the resources. In a kind of more wise or cyclical way, but yes, I think what we should actually start thinking. That's why I think, you know, the Anthropocene is a problematic term to my mind nowadays, because it kind of sets up the repertoire of responses. Because if we assume that Anthropos has created a difference on the planet, okay, then the response is either to find the origin of the Anthropos, or to say, oh well, if we have created such much change on the planet, let's make a good change now. So let's find a good Anthropocene, right? So for me, we should actually refrain from our actions on the planet, because we cannot, there is no such a thing as intact environment or non-exploitive environment, right? Every kind of species does that for many years, and if they find the resources, they will do it. But it is a reorientation of our epistemological and our ethical and moral system. I know that I don't really have the answer how we will do that, but it is important to start thinking towards that direction. And for example, are you part of the studio, or you're a PhD student, Peter?
I'm bachelor. I'm a part of the Landschaft und landscape and territorials.
Okay. Because that's kind of interesting, because nowadays in Bartlett, for example, that I work with Claudia, we have that kind of questions. Have we actually moved away from the biodiversity, and therefore the response is to go back into it, or we should actually move even forward? Okay, and to exclude completely the biodiversity. Truth is that we have lost our plasticity in terms of evolutionary traits, precisely because we have distanced too much from the biodiversity. And in one sense, in a moral sense, this is okay, because we sustain even the people, we do everything to save the people that they are sick and they are almost gonna die, through kind of artificial injections into their bodies. But at the same time, you know, we have actually applied such an epistemological framework on the whole idea of us being in the planet, that it has been done in an extreme way. And that's why it's important to change the thinking framework instead of providing new actions at the moment.
Yeah, I think that is really important to answer the 000, the third point. I mean, I always try, Manos. I know it's early, but I always try. And if I look at this slide, there is human, non-human, and inhuman. And even if we locate ourselves in the world for us, so we say, okay, we need to fight the virus. Is the virus against us? is pandemics and viruses against the human. Even if we put ourselves in this position, then there used to be an army saying that to fight an enemy, you need to think like the enemy. And do viruses think through doors? Do viruses think through compartmented environment? I suspect they don't. They will think through fields, through organic distribution. So even if we put ourselves in the human position of fighting against a systemic virus or a systemic wherever system, we should try and reframe the way we think, and we think spatial organization in response to this. Whether it's a fight, it's a collaboration, or it's a dialogue. We can't entail this dialogue if we don't reframe the way we think spatial organization, because the entity we are creating, the dialogue, the fight, the relationship with, is not thinking in this way. That's my first thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, Maria.
Sorry, you can say, I wanted to jump into this discussion. I was
just ask another things from the professor's side. I will ask everybody that intervene to say the name and which course are they in, even if they're not parts of their course, so we kind of create a map. Thanks. Although we know Maria, but maybe also the
other. Hi, I'm Maria Kuptsova. I'm a PhD student in the Synthetic Landscape Lab with the Professor Claudia Pesquero. Yeah, so, and I'm also a tutor of some of you. So, yeah, I wanted to jump in to Claudia's words, but first of all, I wanted to say, wow, thank you so much for such an informative lecture. It relates so much with my research, so I am fully in. And there are so many references and so many thoughts which are new, and at the same time that I'm sharing with you, that are just amazing. Thank you so much. And I was thinking that maybe it's not, Claudia was saying how to fight this, for example, the virus, but for me, it's not more about the fight, and it's not more about positioning human into the center, out of the center, or removing the human. It's more about understanding that we are actually we are shared with the viruses, we are shared with the technology, and there's no clear distinction. There are no clear borders in between digital, technological, human, animal. There are no clear distinction between the atoms and the pixels or bits of data. Yeah? And I think here, for me, the interest of this discussion, if we, for example, think that we can program the DNA and code ourselves, we are becoming partly digital. If we think that we can share our information through the, I don't know, capsules with the biological matter, then biological matter becoming digital, or digital becoming biological. And also the understanding of this technology, it's actually not that much different from the idea of the technique. And maybe I'm jumping a bit into my discussion of the PhD a bit later on, but I want to open up now as well. For example, I refer to, in my research, also to words of Beckminster Fuller, who is actually saying that the body and that the human was one of the first tools itself, and that the human was designing the technique, and the technique was also designing a human. So there is no clear distinction between this technique and the human, and the technique and the human and technology. So actually all this understanding is blurred. And now we are understanding that there are so many different kind of species that we are creating, and different kind of intelligences. And you were referring to the machinic intelligence, but now I believe that next intelligence, which is right now present, is this kind of biomachinic intelligence, which means the translation of the biological intelligence through this maybe algorithms or through the technology. No? So, and we see that they are present. This kind of intelligence is present not only in the decision making, but also into the judgments. No? So, and for example, if we are talking about the design is not only produced by human. Design is produced by the alien agency as well. And it's not only produced, it's judged by the alien agency as well. So and here I come in my thoughts to the idea of the aesthetics, which are considered to be something related to human, to our intellectual and sensual judgments. And what if these judgments now are shared, and actually we understand that it's not only human judgments, it's also a non-human judgments as well. So how do we frame the language and the vocabulary of the aesthetical language? And I wanted to also maybe jump to another topic of your lecture and refer to the idea of the algorithm and Alan Turing. And here I also want to add that in these algorithms, if we are talking about algorithms, should this algorithm necessarily be a problem-solving algorithm, or it can just create a free system, the open system, where biological and technological and human agency could collaborate and create the common. So these are my, I don't know, comments or the questions or just the thoughts that I'm throwing to discussion.
I think all of them, they were kind of valid comments and questions. I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm proposing that we need to interact and be connected with everything, you know, and therefore to understand everything. I think we should actually learn to live with the incapacity to understand everything. And you know, organisms like us, we have completely different niches, and not everything is connected with everything else in this world. There are only parts of one niche that is being connected and be affected by another niche and another organism, and so on and so on and so forth. And this is what kind of virus is the coronavirus. It kind of brings into the discussion, because until January, we were discussing about, you know, bringing the biomass within the urban environment, and it's always, you know, this kind of immediate reaction, especially by the students, you know, to bring a communication between the different species, either to kind of eat them, allow them to do things, and touch them, and so on and so forth. But for me, the valid position is to get in terms with our inhumanity, with a part that we are at the very last instance, we are becoming humans, but mainly we are inhuman entities. Okay, there are bacteria in our bodies, there are viruses in our bodies, that they might not be lethal and deadly, but they can actually contribute to things that are becoming part of our systems, and they can evolve with us, right? Can we understand this one? And can we understand how this kind of epidemiological part of the society is not anymore based on the private self and the private property, but it is about the shared world, that at some point that we don't get it, at some points we cannot communicate with it. Not everything is a communication, and this is part of the problematic of the epistemologies of cybernetics, right? That everything has become information, and everything can communicate one between the other, and so forth and so on. No, not everything can communicate, and it's good, you know. And then how we can address that? We can address that by creating new world, by speculating, and even making steps or leaps of faith, and therefore construct provisionally new things. You know, and that's my idea about when I studied that kind of discussion, the idea of the planning. You know, planning nowadays should not be thought as dogmatic as it was in the kind of modern that it comes to make things clear and organized, but it's becoming speculative, and it's kind of a very provisional. And we can actually, but we need somehow to reshape the world, and it doesn't matter if we revise it. Okay, so I totally understand this kind of communication between the biological substratum and the algorithmic substratum. Okay, but for me, the most important is not their communication, but how they cut the world differently through their own kind of niches, through their own kind of sensing, processing, and acting mechanism.
Well, maybe I was referring not to the communication, but to the relation between of them, and making the algorithm, which is based on the different kind of data, which is coming from the different agencies. That's maybe not about the relationship and open communication. It's more about this kind of cosmopolitical algorithm which takes it into account.
Yeah,
I think in a way what Maria was saying also correlate with the work of Andy Clark and how we co-think with the world that surround us or create a different position in there. Cool. Do we have other questions? I see we have Philippe Morel also online. Ciao, Philippe. Or
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Philippe.
Yes. How are you doing? I hope you're fine. How have you? No, I don't have a specific question. I jumped in a bit late. I have to say, it's I definitely share some of the idea. One I'm still a bit unsure about it is that when you say, I mean, either Emmanouil or Claudia, that we are far from the, I mean, mostly Emmanouil, I would say, defense is a proponent of this position. When you say that we are far from the biological, I would say I'm not so sure. I believe that the human being remains, I mean, so amazingly close to the global ecosystem. You know, like we are still part of the natural selection process on an amazing level. And what the current crisis is showing is that, in fact, it's not a crisis. It's the most natural process that, I mean, which is happening. And it happened for the last, I mean, 3.5 million of years, at least for humans. And it will happen for quite a long time. And I think obviously only technology is able to go against this process. There's no discussion about it, according to me. But so far we are not really post-natural yet, post-biological. We are completely embedded into into the most classical natural selection process that we have experienced again for the last 3.5 million of years as humans.
I think more kind of Philippe, I get what you're saying, but allow me to think that we are more in the artificial selection. Even by the fact that we don't allow people to die by helping them, is part of this, is completely, we have given our biological evolutionary plasticity towards the techno-evolution. And on that matter, I don't think that human beings are participating in natural selection. And to be honest, if we throw ourselves into natural selection, most likely we will not survive.
Well, many people do not survive. I mean, many people do not survive. I mean, every year we simply have, I mean, tens of millions of people who die from, I mean, from many different kind of disease, from, I mean, just being too old, obviously, but also from many different kinds of diseases. So again, no, I believe that so far we did not manage to escape nature. and I don't know if it's good or if it's not. I mean, this is a moral or ethical question, and I don't want to go into this for the moment. But as a fact, I have to say that we are still a part, again, of the natural selection, like many, many, many other biological species. And we didn't manage to take such crazy distances from that. Okay, we can cure quite a lot of diseases, but from time to time, a new one appears, it goes too fast, and then it's called an epidemic, you know. But it's no different. It's no different from anything else. The only difference is that it goes too fast. So because of that, we don't have enough time to react. We don't have enough time to discover or to invent a new treatment.
I don't know. For me, the reason, sorry, Philippe, but then I let you continue. But the reason why I initiated this as well is because I would like to understand which kind of spatial response, alternative to the one is given now, we can actually give. Because it's not a question of only for doctor to find a cure, which is probably outside of our discipline, but it's also for us to give a spatial response. The spatial response of the lockdown that is given now is for me obsolete. And as I said before, tactically, doesn't even works on the tactic of the virus. So which other alternative tactics we can develop, considering we are at the moment in a series of courses that discuss exactly the relationship between the natural and the artificial. And there are articles coming out that suggest that wilderness should be kept apart from human. What does that mean? How can you keep wilderness in bracket apart from humans? So, you know, these are discourses that are often held on a political and scientific level, but I think architect and designer can have a say because it's quite a lot a matter of spatial organization. And unfortunately, architecture design seems to be prepared because the response that is given is still the one of the pandemic of 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Probably millions of years ago would have been different, as, you know, it would have been left more to self-organization. Then there has been a response which was about, you know, closing down. But is this really the spatial response we can give, the best one? I doubt it. Of course, I don't have an answer, but that's the question, in my opinion.
Oh, of course, it's. I mean, personally, I always was a proponent of the, I mean, of broadacre city. Broadacre cities like models, you know. I mean, I believe that we should occupy the whole of Earth, you know. I mean, at the very moment, human beings only occupy 2% of the total area of Earth, you know, which is nothing. So I believe that we should, I mean, and this for long, I really believe that we should simply live. I mean, each person with 1 square kilometer of land, an house, and super high-tech apparatus, and that's it. I mean, again, it's much closer to the American model, to the American, I mean, post-urban model, and I love it personally. I just believe that we should start occupying the whole of the earth and stop the discourse about I mean, collapsing nature, about the fact that we are too many people on earth, etc., etc. I don't believe that. I mean, what happens is not something which has to do with our relationship with nature. In fact, it's a totally natural phenomena. I mean, it's the most banal phenomena which happens every day. there's only one parameter, is that it goes fast. Most countries are absolutely not prepared because they are run by stupid politicians and pseudo managers who obviously know nothing about management and logistics and whatever. And that's it. You know, it's not a crisis of nature. It's a natural phenomena. It's mostly a crisis of organizational competence or know-how or knowledge, and nothing else. You know, it's like, and in terms of space, my feeling is that we should simply go back to the to very basic rules, like I mean, let me send you this. I don't know if it's gonna work.
If you send it in to everybody.
No, probably. How can I send you?
You can send it in the chat to everybody, and everybody will see it.
Yeah. I want to do that.
You can press share the screen.
I want to send you an image, but it's, I mean, Zoom is not as easy as WhatsApp for this, no? I'm not even sure I can send you an image.
Yes, you can in the chat. But while you talk, I think, well, me and Philippe often depart. I always like to talk with Philippe because we often depart from very opposite positions. Because although I'm all up for understanding the relationship between natural and artificial, like for example, in the discussion about Brodecker, I always stand with Paolo Soleri, which was kicked out of Taliesin because exactly didn't agree on the Brodecker model. But maybe we are going to go there in a bit too complex conversation. I like Manos to answer, and then if there are other students, please. Manos, you want to add something on this?
No, I will agree with Philippe that this is not a crisis of nature, and I will, as I have pushed the conversation, we need to get rid of the concept of nature per se. And but secondly, I would disagree with Philippe that we should actually rely on the models of the past. I think it's time to devise new plans. And although kind of we have, as I will agree, this kind of politicians or pseudo managerial, that's why it's important to have new models and new ideas on the table, because in the next months we will start building new futures or new worlds with the materials that we have on the table. And if we don't have our models, then unfortunately we will have to live in this kind of archaic confinement for many, many more years.
Yeah, that might be true. But these new models, it won't happen it won't happen soon. It's gonna take tens and tens of years. You know, like, ultimately we just enter, we are just entering the time of constant chaos with a natural selection which will remain, and this natural selection will also be empowered, I have to say, by the economic selection and social selection as well. I'm sure you have seen that, for example, in the US, especially in the US, the amount of Black people who are dying from coronavirus is like 5 or 6 times bigger in some cities than white or non-Black people. So again, I mean, I think, I don't know, I'm not a cynical person.
But that's not natural selection, although the article was trying to find some biological reason for that.
No, it's not biological, it's both. I mean, when I say natural selection, it's also on an economic level, you know.
Natural selection, yeah, yes.
I mean, that's the history of the world. The history of the world is about selection. Yeah, and you know what? nothing will change after this crisis. That's my feeling.
Also,
That's clear that that many things should have changed, or many things should change. But honestly, I believe that nothing will really change for one very basic reason. It's because the people who have the power to change things will remain the same one as the one who were running this society. And those people, they didn't do anything to, let's say, to make the world a better place. And I don't think they will start. They won't
well,
start.
that's
Nothing
true.
will change. Let's be realistic.
No,
Well,
yeah, of
okay,
course.
I'm going to jump in the discussion.
Go, Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm also a PhD student with Claudia Pasquero. And yeah, I'm sorry, I just was searching for a perfect moment to jump in, and the perfect moment kind of didn't come, so I decided to jump in immediately. And you know, talking about the natural selection here, okay, is good, it's on place, but I'm a conscious being, and you know, I am responsible too. So I'm not sitting here waiting for some virus to kill me or for a meteorite to fall down on me until I die, but I have a consciousness and I'm responding to the situation that is coming to me. I'm not waiting for some other people sitting somewhere on the top of some kind of virtual pyramid to change something, but I can respond myself to whatever situation I'm in, and that response, my response will affect the way I live and the way and what I'm experiencing. So somehow I had to jump in immediately, and I will talk about this topic a little bit more on my own presentation. I don't know if
I agree with this.
you already comment something, or I can continue.
We can only do it by yourself.
Yeah.
But what I mean is that we still have
connecting here and discussing something and discussing how we can respond. We are responding to the situation.
There are many. I mean, there's billions of people on Earth at the moment who have absolutely no power to decide for themselves. That's what I'm saying.
People have power to decide for themselves because they were
not all. I mean,
that's my opinion.
No, there's too many people without money, without without any alternative from anything, you know. So that's my feeling.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is why I'm not that optimistic. But I mean,
I am the human here, but let's not be too harsh to the humans, right? I mean, we know that there are the decisions are environmentally affected, and when I say environmentally, I will agree with Philippe. Is the financial situation, is the healthcare situation, is the whole labor situation. So let's face these as problems, okay? And that's partly because that's part that I say that we have we have an artificial selection modeled out of natural selection. And by the way, if you get the story, the whole idea of the survival of the fittest to Darwin is coming from an economist of his time, okay, and an industrialist. So it's kind of interesting how these things are coming together. But everyone is responsible, okay, but this is beyond you and me. This, when we're talking about this kind of situations that are not accidents but are part of the workings of these planets, that we have to realize that the private self is not the point where we should start read the world, okay. It's more about our this kind of epidemiological reading of the society, this kind of, you know, that the society has precisely this kind of transactions that we should actually keep in mind. Okay. Is there any other student that wants to ask something? I can see here like 20 boxes or something, 60 boxes. Oh, we have a face.
My name is Teresa, and I'm a student at the Institute for Experimental Architecture under Marian Coletti. So I have a bit of different background to the overall topic. So I'm not so much into the landscape lab too. But for me, it was a really, really interesting lecture, especially focusing on the terms post-human, cyborg, and Anthropocene, because we are dealing a lot with post-digital thoughts at our institute at the moment. So I would like to ask a more general question about how would you evaluate the role of the increasing digitalization into that context and debate? Because especially when it comes to the spatial figuration addressed before, I think this human desire to collectively meet and experience conversations or stuff is always a factor that drives to design spaces where to meet, for instance.
Okay, can I ask you a question as well?
Sure.
What do you mean by digitalization? Are we talking about what we're doing here as the digital culture, or are we talking about the more kind of ontological understanding of abstraction and digits and digitals?
Now, in this sense, I would say more with the cultural aspect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think the whole. I'm not fan of this kind of digital culture, and I'm not fan precisely because we can actually connect at this moment, and we can exchange some ideas. But it is important to be engaged. For example, with the 60 people that are now in the chat room, and I don't see their eyes, or if they sleep. For example, you know, I can pick up a name, and I can know if he's eating now or he's watching TV and he's just on. But that's, you know, we need this kind of personal and collective contact. But at the same time, you know, for me, it's more interesting the whole idea of abstraction and digitalization as a philosophical concept, and the mode of abstraction, because eventually we can't do without a mode of abstraction. We tend to abstract things, you know, and this is part of our mode of living on this world. It's impossible to grasp everything into our processing systems, but we need to be aware of these modes of abstraction. They're valid, and they're kind of hypothetical existence, because there is no such a thing as data, because data it means something that it is given, right? So we extract, and through the medium we extract, we create some kind of datum, and through this kind of datum we create some kind of information, and through this kind of information we create knowledge. And all this is partial. It's human related, because this is who we are, let's face it, and it can never give us a full spectrum of the world, and it will never. And that's the beautiful thing, right? And so the same goes with this kind of digital tools. They're not here to supplement one to another, but they kind of work kind of complementary, let's say, in a different perspective, let's say, giving us different capacities and different affordances to interact, to communicate, to miscommunicate, to understand, to misunderstand, and therefore to create. Okay, I don't think that it is a solution for the future. Is another kind of moments of this kind of archaic confinement. And obsolete confinement, as Claudia would say. but at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to explore kind of different ways of doing things. And and it's not something that substitutes our collective presence in the class, in the university, on the streets, in the squares, or whatever kind of organizational spatial type that we are in or we will create. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, but
yes, you did.
yeah.
Really good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks. Other question, maybe also from the diploma student or other PhD student that are present. Okay, cool. If there are no other questions, thanks a lot, Manos. I think was great. We'll meet you again at 3 p.m.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thanks,
can you tell me what time we meet again?
3 p.m. Innsbruck time, 4 p.m. your time.
Okay, 4 p.m. my time.
Yeah,
Okay, I would like to thank you very much for your presence on this Zoom room. And I hope see you all again in person at some point. I can read some kind of familiar names on this kind of beautiful grid. Some of my ex and current students are here. So a big hi and big bye from Greece. I'll see the rest in a few hours.
Thanks, Manos.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, the student.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks
Thanks a lot, Manos. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Philippe, for
Bye-bye.
joining in. Always great. Bye. Ciao.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.
To the student. Ciao. See you later. Bye.